Good way to start the trading week, up 0.5%, but look, halfway through the session it looked like it was going to be an awful lot better.
James, we actually saw the highest level that we've seen in 2013 so far today, but it certainly didn't feel like it. And that's because if we have a look at the intraday graph of the Australian share market, you can see that both the opening as well as the close were on the lows of the session, and that really points to a failed rally on the Aussie share market. During the session, we actually saw a high of 5,201 points before pulling back again, but still a rise of 0.5%, but on light volumes, $3.2 billion worth of stock being traded. We were just talking about the retail sales numbers, and they did come in lighter than expected, down by 0.4%. In particular, it was clothing, footwear, personal accessories, which were down by 4.2%, which dragged down the numbers. So the retail is certainly in the spotlight today. We saw Super Retail, which was down by 2.9%. We saw the Reject Shop down by 2.5%. Premier Investments was down by 1.9%. Harvey Norman was down by 1.7%, and we also saw JB Hi-Fi down by 0.8%. Department stores, though, were only down by 0.1% in the month of March. So David Jones and Myer getting off lightly today on the back of those retail sales numbers. But really on the market was the miners, which were the focus of the session and which were the best performers, and that was on the back of those non-farm payrolls numbers out of the US, the job numbers. That spurred on commodities. In fact, copper seeing its biggest rise in almost 18 months. So the big miners doing well. Lynas also worth a mention, up by 16% this session. We've seen the Malaysian election results that was seen as a key risk for the stock, but with the coalition government getting back in Malaysia, it looks like it's clear skies for Lynas, and the shares certainly doing well on the back of that. So the Aussie market doing well today. It could have been better, but altogether, technically, we did see a failed rally, opening and closing around the lows of the session.
Corporate stories out and about today, Julia, in particular. Well, starting with always a good news story. Karoon Gas, huge performer. A bit of a discovery, certainly helping to put a rocket under their shares.
Absolutely. If we have a look at Karoon Gas, this is a pure explorer, and with its drilling campaign going on at the moment, the share price moving on the back of its drilling results. Now, if we have a look at the Santos Basin, which is in offshore Brazil, there's been 3 wells drilled so far. 2 of them have managed to find oil. All of those wells named after Australian animals, and the latest is the Bilby one, which has struck oil 200-metre gross column of gas. So this is quite a big find. This is after Kangaroo 1 was successful. Emu 1, of course, was a disappointment, but the latest results really supporting the commercial viability of this Santos Basin in offshore Brazil. So the shares just rocketing up by 22%. And just on that resources space, while we have seen the resources, especially BHP and Rio, in a bit of a downward drift over the last few months, things are looking much more positive for these stocks. Back in February, we were talking to our clients about divergence in BHP shares, which was an early warning signal that perhaps we would see a decrease. And if we have a look at BHP now, something different is going on. We've seen that big decrease, but now we have seen higher highs and higher lows. So it does look like the beginning of an uptrend is in place for BHP Billiton, and it does look like the bottom was at around about $30 for the stock. So at the moment, technically, things are looking good for BHP and Rio Tinto. We've seen a strong bounce back in commodities, and it's very unlike this type of signals that we were seeing back in February. So technically, things are starting to look pretty exciting for BHP Billiton and Rio Tinto. Let's hope there's a bit more life in this part of the market after what's been a painful couple of months.
We're almost out of time, but on BHP and Rio, what is sort of the upward price levels that you'd be looking at if we are starting to see some positive technical signals?
I guess the good news is, because these are very traded stocks, there are some very key technical levels to be watching out for. The first one's at the $34 mark, and between $34 to $35 is very important. You can see over here, if I drew a line there, that would be the $35 level. If we can surpass that $35 level, things are really looking quite good, up to the $39 level. So we're watching that $34 to $35 space, which tends to be a danger zone for the stock. The good news for investors is that we haven't broken that very key support level of $30 in this round down this time, and in fact the stock looks to be bouncing off and moving above those levels in an uptrend.